Hi guys, Mike Greer here, and in this little video, we're going to look at the distinction between authority versus responsibility, and we're going to talk about why it's so important to find the balance. In fact, this is an important balance to achieve in your personal relationships, in society at large, and in your work life. Once we achieve that, you'll find that after all, it was the fair and decent thing to do. What do we mean by authority, and what do we mean by responsibility? Well, authority is having the power, the resources, the money, the elected office, the status to get something done. Responsibility is when you bear the full consequences of those actions. And in fact, when you have authority and responsibility completely balanced, all's right with the world. Let's look at some real life examples. In this first situation, we see that a spouse has been put in charge of running the household, staying home and running the household. On the other hand, the other spouse has said, I'm not going to let you make any buying decisions because I work outside the home. I make the money around here, so I will decide what we purchase. In this situation, we have a spouse that is buried in responsibilities, but doesn't have the power to make the day-to-day decisions to get the supplies and the tools that he or she needs to make the house run. Here's another example from real life. A backseat driver that gives lots and lots of advice. You know what that's like. You're the one responsible for driving. You have your foot on the gas pedal. You have your foot near the brake. You are trying to navigate in and out of traffic. But meanwhile, someone has taken the authority without any responsibility. That person has taken authority to function as the backseat driver and nag and tell you when to change lanes and tell you how fast to go and on and on and on. A clear case of imbalance. It's just not fair. By the way, you want to get those in balance, just pull over if you're the driver and say, here, you drive. Here's another example. Sometimes we ask teachers to be fully responsible for the final performance of students, even though they don't have the authority to get the student to do the homework, to have the student go to bed on time and get rested, to have the student show up in school well fed. The teacher doesn't have the power to have the students do all the things that are necessary to enable the ability to learn. Yet still we try to hold them responsible. Here's one of my favorites, the talk show host, the bombastic, noisy talk show host who is calling for war. We've got to go in there with our guys and fight. Well, really? That person is taking authority, but has no responsibility for looking the parents of wounded soldiers and casualties in the eyes, has no responsibility for finding the money, for figuring out how the war strategy is going to start and how it's going to end. No, they just sit behind their microphone asserting all sorts of authority of the radio waves, without any responsibility for the consequences. Here's a business example. Let's say you have to manage a team of 20 people and you got no money. What project manager hasn't been in a situation kind of like this? Responsibility is heavy. You've got a lot to get done, but you don't have the power, you don't have the resources that you need to do your job. So it's important to push for this common sense, decent balance. Get the money you need, get the necessary decision-making power. And here's another example from the business world, an executive changing a deadline. Somebody in a far-off office, far away from the project team, makes a decision that we're going to move the deadline up a month. This person doesn't have to suffer the consequences of living with the project team, of trying to figure out how they're going to get things done, of deciding which corners get cut. They've just waved a magic wand in a ready, fire, aim manner and said, the deadline's moving up a month. Certainly not fair, certainly not decent. The authority to make those sorts of changes have to be shared with the project team and the project manager. So the object of the game is to try and find this perfect balance where the person who is feeling the consequences of action, who bears that responsibility, also has the power and the resources to take action. So take every opportunity you can to work toward the balance, making sure that authority is equal to responsibility, in your personal relationships, in society, in your work life, that if you're going to be held responsible for making something happen, that you have the authority, the resources to do it. You do that and you'll live happily ever after.